Ladies and gentlemen, episode 107. In this episode, we have a guest with us, Joe Menard. He is from, or I should say, the creator of the Model Railway Freight Exchange group on Facebook. And you might be wondering what that is. Well, you know what? We're going to talk about that. So stick around because we're going to get the show on the tracks. All right, my friends, as we stated in the intro, we have a guest with us, Joe Menard, and he created the Model Railway Freight Exchange group on Facebook. And I learned about this and I joined it, I want to say a year and a half ago, roughly. And if you remember, I don't want to kill the vibe or I guess let you know too much, because otherwise, what's the point of having him on here? But he talks about interchange and freight interchange between model railroads, and we've talked about this before. So when I've talked about it before, guess what? I got my ideas from this, and I know I've talked about the group before too. So, before we move into that, it was a very, very nice conversation. And before we move into that, we are going to do our like our sponsor ads and stuff like that. So, um, so let's move into the ads, and then we are going to get right to the interview. So stick around, because guess what? Right after the ads, we're going to get the interview going.
Looking for a great deal on model railroading? When you find one, you jump on it. And Broadway Limited Imports has one you won't want to miss: the 2025 Conductors Club locomotive, the GE ES44 in HO and N scale. This exclusive club members only release comes at an unbeatable price. HO scale offerings: Paragon Force Sound, DCC with smoke, just $199.99. Stealth DCC ready, only $129.99. N-scale offerings: Paragon Force Sound, DCC $149.99. Stealth DCC ready, $99.99. And check out these stunning road names: CPKC's newest scheme, Western Maryland, Georgia Railroad CSX Heritage Units, and Union Pacific's Pink Ribbon Scheme honoring the fight against breast cancer. You can order these locomotives by May 23, 2025. These locomotives are expected to deliver to customers this fall. For more information on the Conductors Club membership and its many perks, visit Broadway-Limited.com. Broadway Limited is a proud partner of the Model Railroad Talk podcast.
Calling all model railroaders and railroad enthusiasts. The Hawkeye Model Railroad Club and ScaleSigns.com are proud to sponsor the 5th annual Iowa City Train Show on Sunday, October 19th at the Johnson County Fairgrounds in Iowa City, Iowa, from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Enjoy 2 buildings packed full of model railroad items in scales HO, N, O, and more, along with railroad memorabilia of all shapes and sizes. Admission is just $5 for adults, with kids 12 and under free. Don't forget to also check out the Hawkeye Model Railroad Club's layout progress down at their club building, open to the public for free all day long. Interested in being a vendor or displaying your organization or model railroad layout? Check out our website at www.hawkeyemodelrr.com/2025-train-show. The 5th annual Iowa City Train Show, sponsored by ScaleSigns.com and the Hawkeye Model Railroad Club, on Sunday, October 19th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Johnson County Fairgrounds in Iowa City, Iowa. We'll see you at the show.
And we have Joe Menard with us. Joe is the creator, I guess is the best way to put it, of the Model Railway Freight Exchange on Facebook. It is, well, you know what? We'll talk about that here in a bit. But first, Joe, thanks for coming on to the show. We're happy to have you.
Thanks for having me, Gary.
So let's just start with some simple stuff to kind of let people know, okay, standard questions we always do. How long have you been a model railroader?
Well, it depends how you view it. I started when I was very young, as a young boy, just playing
Mhm.
with, the typical Tyco set. And over the years, my parents moved a fair bit. And so I never really had a stable layout. When I was
Mhm.
16, I joined Model Railway Club and was participating in that for a while, joined a modular group for a bit. And then eventually, as I aged and got older and got into university level, I kind of dropped out of it for a bit. But I've always been in and out of the hobby for a long time,
Sure.
generally just building smaller layouts and bedrooms and that kind of thing.
Right. And that's the general consensus. I know we've had some guests on here that, they've been building models from the time they got into it when they were a kid, been modeling and stuff. But I think that's kind of the general consensus is when you get to them teenage years and college years, it kind of sometimes goes by the wayside because for whatever reason, reasons are different, but um, it's good to know our stories are all pretty close to about the same. Um, so what scale do you model in?
I'm currently focused on HO scale. Originally, when I started as a real young kid, it was all HO stuff just because, larger models for kids to play with.
Sure.
And then I switched to N scale in my teens because my parents wouldn't give me room to build one. So I had like a little shelf layout in N scale.
Hmm.
And then just in the last, I guess probably about the last 10 years, I started looking at HO scale because of a company called Rapido Trains. They're a Canadian company that started focusing a lot on on Canadian steam locomotives and stuff like that I was interested in. And they had fairly close tolerances for mimicking Canadian specific locomotives.
Okay.
And so I thought, maybe I'll switch over to that and get into the sound aspect. So that's kind of how I drifted back into HO scale.
Sure. Sure. Um, so do you currently have a layout?
Yes, I currently have one under construction. It's a small 4x8 layout, fairly simple, just an oval with a fairly significant passing siding and then some yard space. And I'm working on maybe getting some locomotive uh, servicing facilities as well because I'm doing steam era.
Sure. Sure. Um, and there's nothing wrong with having small layouts. I think some of the misconceptions for people looking at coming into the hobby or they already starting in the hobby of I need to build this big old grand layout and everything else, and it's like, this just shows you've been into modeling for a long time and you're building a smaller layout. Whereas like me, I'm building a half a basement, but I've been modeling for a long time. So you have to build what suits you, and you don't necessarily have to have a large layout to enjoy the hobby.
That's true. You can have a lot of fun in a smaller space. Sometimes having a smaller layout forces you to focus more too.
Mm-hmm.
Or sometimes if you have a larger layout, sometimes you have too much space and then you're struggling to try to fill it all, or it can take too long to build for some people, right? Like some people are impatient like me and they just want to be done, right? And so like, it could be like 10, 15 years before you finish a big layout, right? So
Right. And I know when we were chatting yesterday before recording this episode, I'd said that originally I had all these plans with mine, and then it's like finally I had to take a step back, and it's like, the old saying, "Kiss, keep it simple, stupid." I had to tell myself that of, you know, I don't need a whole bunch of track. I need to focus on what I want to do, what I want my railroad to be. So, and I. Uh, like you said, even with a small layout, focusing on it helps you focus on more specific things. So it's good to have somebody, another person on here that has a small layout. So moving on, are you running DC or DCC?
Well, that's also part of the reason I switched to HO was to take advantage of some of the DCC features. In particular, I'm a huge fan of sound, and I have an interesting philosophy on sound that maybe not everybody has. But sound really doesn't take up any extra space, which I find is a really useful thing, especially if you're building a smaller layout. So, you've got the small layout, and you've got the steam engine or even a diesel that's rumbling and making engine sounds and everything else. It could just be sitting idle on a track and it's still kind of producing something beyond what you can see visually. Right now, you've got this kind of immersion effect where, oh, the train's moving. I can hear the brakes squealing, or I can hear, whatever sound.
Sure.
And I've read some other articles too, where people aren't just putting sound in the locomotives, but they're also adding, bird chirping sounds or waterfall sounds and this kind of thing. And I think that's a really cool aspect of the hobby that we don't explore enough, because the sound can really help you feel like you're part of that scene, as opposed to just, looking at a static scene with just sort of model train wheels, rattling away on the track. So I think
Yeah.
it's neat.
And I know I've had several other guests on here that they've talked, and they've been on both sides, like where one person that's been on here, they like the sound of the clickety clack of the rails and the wheels and stuff. But then I've, had people on that, they like the sound. And I think I agree with you. I like sound. Um, but with my layout, the way it's designed, I also know I have to keep in the back of my mind of sound levels. Not only I have to have the sound levels for me low, because my area is in a sense confined, and as much as I would love and eventually will have every locomotive sound equipped, um, having all of them on, because I've had where my current locomotives that have sound on them, and then I've also got some of the scale trains reefers that have sound. I've had those on there, and it's just, even with the sound levels low, it gets hard to hear everything. So I agree with you, but I'm kind of in the middle. Is like, I guess my suggestion to anybody new coming into the hobby or looking at getting into sound is realize after a certain point you're gonna have to adjust the levels to the size of your layout and the other things. But as far as what you're saying about the non-train sounds, I agree with there too. The added sounds there, like I know I'm planning on putting like a little thunderstorm rolling in. I've got a sound module for that in one corner, and I'm looking forward to getting that up. But I'm going to have the sound level low. But I think it definitely does add to it, and especially on a small layout too. I agree. Um, I believe sound can actually um, take make the fun of it and take it to another level.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Ask you, because your layout's a little bit different than mine.
Mhm.
So in my case, my layout is 4x8. It's in my living room. It doesn't take up a lot of space,
Right.
and so I don't have trains running around the room, kind of like you do there.
Mhm.
And so if I turn the sound up really loud, all that sound is just coming from the one place.
Right.
But if I could see a problem, and I don't know if there's a problem, you can sort of fill this in. But if you have a couple of these locomotives running in different locations in a room,
Mhm.
now you've got these really loud sounds coming from every wall type of thing. Now it's become like almost it doesn't draw your focus in because it's like scattered everywhere. Does it kind of like cause a problem that way?
In my case, no, because there again, I have my sound volumes, and I'm still, because I'm still in the building, or I'm not building. I'm actually in the running trains, fixing any little things in the track. But for like in my case, with the sound is if I when I turn the track on, and I've got what I'm trying to think right now, I got four, maybe five locomotives on the tracks now that have sound. Um, a lot of times when I turn the track on, I have the sounds off except for maybe two of them, and they're in different locations. But I have the sound level low, the where that if I'm at one end of the layout, yeah, I can hear it, but it's like off in the distance.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it would be like, you know, you hear a train in the distance kind of thing. That's the biggest thing. And I know once I get to this point where I'm focusing more on, um, basically all I'm focusing on is details and operation. I'll probably end up adjusting them down because my goal is to basically have it to where you have to kind of follow your train to really hear the sounds.
That's a good idea. Yeah. Yeah. The only annoying sound, well, the most annoying sound I found so far on these sound powered locomotives is the bell on the steam
Mhm.
locomotive, because you turn them on and you get this ping, 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 and it just keeps going and going and going. And after a while, you're like, oh my God, you got to shut that off, because it doesn't make any sense to have this pinging going on forever.
And what's funny about that is because I now like program all my new locomotives and everything through JMRI Decoder Pro, and I don't understand why it doesn't matter if it's Broadway Limited or Tsunami or Soundtracks or Lock Sound. They always have the bell from the factory. The bell is set louder than the horn or any of the other stuff. And I don't understand that. And like on mine, I turn the bell way down. Like
Hmm.
for me, I turn the sound level of the bell down at least half of what the horn level is, just because of that. You know, the you're running through a grade crossing or something, yeah, you can hear it, but it can get annoying. I hate to say it, but it can,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
There again, um, it's one of those things that, in my opinion, you have to find what sound level is good for you. I know I've seen in a lot of groups where new people ask about sound sound locomotives, and you can always tell the people that have had them for a while, and they're like, yeah, I turn mine way down, and half the time I am on because, for one reason or another. So
Yeah,
um
that makes sense. I mean, the other problem I've run into too, technologically with DCC sound, is I bought a really old DCC system,
mhm,
an old MFRC,
mhm,
or old, is it MFRC, Model Rectifier Company?
okay,
Anyways, it's a Prodigy Advance,
mhm,
and it has, a keypad that goes from 0 to 9,
mhm,
and then has a shift button where you can get a 1 in front of it and go, 11, 12, 13.
mhm,
But then if you want to get into the 20s, you can't.
sure,
And so a lot of the locomotives I have sounds almost up to 30.
mhm,
And so there's a lot of weird sounds. Like most of the major ones I can get anyway, because like they put most of the most important ones in the lower numbers.
right,
But there are some kind of odd sounds, like maybe coal shoveling or something might be 22 or whatever. And now I can't get it until I get a better system with more numbers, I guess.
right. And I'm not sure if MRC can connect to a computer or not, depending on what your system is. I used my Digitrack system. That's the nice thing about like my system. It's connected to the computer, and then using JMRI Decoder Pro, I can go in there and I can actually remap all those sounds to where, your coal shoveling, we'll say, use an example, say, like you said, it's 22 or whatever. I can move that to number 8 or 9 if I wanted to. So,
Right.
technology is good, but if you're using some of the older stuff, I remember my original Digitrack system. Well, shoot, that was 20 or 22, 24 years ago, something like that. And looking at the system I have now, it's like, yeah, I wouldn't have been able to do half of what I can do now back then.
Right. Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to so you have created, or you started a group on Facebook. It's called Model Railway Freight Exchange. Um, let's start with why don't you tell us a little bit about that group? Tell us what the group is about.
So I belong to a couple of different model railroad groups on Facebook.
Mhm,
One of them in particular is for people who have shelf layouts at home, small, really small layouts.
mhm,
And one of the things that came to my mind anyway is that you can only have so many industries on a small shelf layout, right? You might have one or two, maybe if you're really, really crafty, you can get up to 5 in there or something, depending on how big this shelf is.
mhm,
But you're limited in the number of industries you can have. And so, for example, if you have a coal mine, that could take up a huge amount of your layout. And then, if you want to ship that coal to a power plant, now power plants are pretty big too. So now you've got like these two gigantic industries, and you're really just moving a rail car from one end of your shelf to the other.
Mm-hmm.
And it might not even be traveling that far. And then a lot of those industries also probably would normally produce a very long train, right? Of, 70 70 coal cars or something. So then I was thinking about card systems where people use cards to assign to different rail cars so that they can shuffle them around on their layout and keep things interesting, turn it into sort of like a switching puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was thinking, well, why not connect all of these layouts together? So, if I have a coal mine and you have a power plant, then why not have an interchange track on my layout? I can like drop a coal car off at that interchange, and then you could come on your layout and pick up that coal car at your interchange and
Sure.
sort of create almost like this network of model railways, kind of similar to what a real life railroad is like, where I might ship a box car from New York to San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
So, in the same way I could ship a box car from my model train where I'm located here in Canada to, say, someone like yourself down in the US, and
Sure.
we could have a freight exchange of some kind.
Sure. Now, for the listeners, obviously I know the answer to this because I'm part of the group, but for the listeners now, are you actually physically shipping cars, or is this just kind of a virtual thing?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, we were talking about that earlier, that some people seem to be confused about how it would work.
Mm-hmm.
And so in my imagination here and trying to come up with this idea, I realized there'd be some problems. Like, for example, shipping cars would get pretty expensive if you were like sticking an actual box car in the mail and sending them across the country to somebody else. So I kind of threw that out the window. So there
Right.
wouldn't be a requirement for people to do that, because that's just, I think most model railroaders would rather buy a new box car for their layout than spend that kind of money shipping a
Mm-hmm.
box car to some other guy, halfway across the country, right?
Right.
So the idea wasn't so much that. The idea was more that we could ship things sort of virtually, like similar to a railway card system, where maybe you're shipping a boxcar off your layout, so you pick it up or you put it in a fiddle yard
Mm-hmm.
and remove it and put it on a shelf, and then put it back when the cards say to put that car back.
Mm-hmm.
Be kind of a similar thing, except instead of putting your rail cars and your shipments just on a shelf, you could actually ship that shipment to somebody else, and then they wouldn't even need a card system. They'd be like, well, I just got this coal car from my friend in this city, and now it's on my layout, so now I got to deal with it and add it to my schedule of shipping on my layout, right? So
Sure. Now, with this kind of interchange, I guess, the first thing that comes to mind, and obviously we're talking virtual interchange, so no, but just in case somebody would ask, scale doesn't matter, correct?
yeah, so I started thinking about the complexities of model railroaders. A lot of people nowadays are into more of a modern era railway. So a lot of people are doing more, the 2000s, and some of the older people in my age bracket who grew up in the 80s are doing 1980s stuff. There aren't as many of the older model railroaders who are doing steam like I'm doing, right? So steam is becoming less and less popular. And for some who are really specific with their era and time, I'm a little bit specific that way. For some of them, it might drive them pretty wild if they had to get a modern, coal car for their layout. They wouldn't want that, right? So I kind of thought it through and thought, well, why don't we just, because it's a virtual exchange anyway, why don't we just allow things to travel through space and time? So if I have an old coal car on my layout dated in 1910, for example, I could send it to you.
Mhm.
And when it arrives at your layout, it can be a modern steel hopper car full of coal
Sure.
that you're going to ship on your layout. And then this way we eliminate any problems where you'd have to go buy this, 1920s rail card. It doesn't make sense, right? So everybody can still stay in their own era, but we can just exchange the coal, not necessarily the actual car itself.
Sure. And I joined this group. I can't even tell you how long ago it was I joined the group. That's what really intrigued me, is the fact of, because on my last layout, I did that with the group I was in, kind of the same thing, but I mean, obviously we were local, or more local-ish, but okay, well, we would run them through my railroad, and then these cars were destined to go to this person's industry on his, where we would physically take and move it, and um obviously that idea has been around for a long time. And if you have people around that want to do that, it's awesome to do. But that was one of the problems, issues. I'd rather say issues than problems that we ran into a lot. Was I at my old railroad, I was modeling modern day at that time, and so yeah, if I ship something to somebody's industry, they might have an industry that's lasted 50, 100 years. The cars, um, it was I would take my modern day cars and go and put them on a 1950 era layout, and they just didn't look right. We still did it because to keep with the the feel of everything, but as soon as we were done running them through that railroad, that particular layout owner was like, "Get that modern stuff off my railroad," kind of thing. So, um, this is kind of so when I seen your group and looked into it and joined it, I really like the idea of it, um, because you're right. I mean, everybody's modeling something different. I'm modeling in a sense the KCS, slightly CP kind of thing. You're modeling the CP in the early 1900s. Well, why can't yeah, exactly. Why can't we should be able to ship freight and not worry about the cars, and so it's more of an idea, I guess. It's the ideology of moving, you're focusing on what freight you're moving and not necessarily the car.
Yeah. And I think because model railroading, what we're doing is we're modeling a transportation system, right, of some kind.
Mhm.
And doesn't matter whether you're doing an English layout in England or if you're doing something in Australia or even South America, wherever you happen to have your railroad set, uh, the coal is still coal wherever you are, right? So it's just that they're being put into slightly different cars. And it's the same thing if you go through historical timeframes. I mean, coal was always coal. So it just happened to be put in different kinds of cars. So we're still talking about a commodity. And the whole reason for the railroads wasn't just to run, and look cool on our layout. It was actually to transport the coal and make a profit, right? So
Right.
the actual economic side of it is part of it too. Not that we're including that in this freight exchange so much. It's just more of a fun way to exchange goods. But I mean, we could it could get pretty complicated if we had to do like a whole pile of way bills and start calculating whether we made a profit on this shipment to
Right.
this. I think you'd have to be pretty crazy about model railroading to want to do that. But
Right. That
I
would
mean, possible, right?
yeah. I mean, and I've read articles where this has been some time ago, but I've read articles where there's modelers out there, they do that, like they have their monetary system set in place for their railroad, and this car generates X amount of revenue, and this one does this, and when this one ships, they're not shipping this car unless it's going to make this much, and which the hobby, we can make the hobby whatever we want. If that's your kind of thing, that's go for it. um but for the rest of us that we just want to run trains and have fun, you know um, so how long has the group been going for?
The group has been probably going for about a year and a half, 2 years, something like that. I'm not
Okay.
sure exactly when I started it, but at first, when I mentioned the group, there was a kind of an excitement about it,
Mhm.
and we had quite a few people joining up. And then there was lots of questions being asked, like, well, how do I mail this box car to this guy, and how does this happen? And so I was trying to explain it to people, and for some reason, some people just didn't understand how it worked.
Right.
And I don't know why. I guess maybe because I didn't explain it properly. I don't know. One gentleman named David Hahn, he was one of the first ones to kind of say, "Hey, I get this. I figured this out." And so we started shipping a few rail cars back and forth. And I worked for the military up here,
Mhm.
and they move us a fair bit, right? So about every 5 or 6 years, we have to move. And
Sure.
so I had a shelf layout at that time that I had to tear down to make a move. And so that's why I'm rebuilding a new one.
Mhm.
And so the group kind of I couldn't ship anything. I couldn't really run a model train at all. So I kind of was on the sidelines and I was saying, hey, everybody in the group, if you want to, you can exchange with each other. You don't have to exchange with me. Like, let's get
Right.
this going. And nobody seemed to be that excited about it. So the group was pretty dormant for a long time.
Mhm.
And now that I finally got a few tracks laid down, I've done a couple of exchanges now with David Hahn. And the way they work, it's pretty simple. We just had a private conversation and said, hey, I haven't got very many industries on my layout.
Mhm.
Uh, what kind of commodity would you need for your layout? And he said he needed some newsprint.
Sure.
And so I invented a story where some guys loaded some newsprint on a boxcar, and for some reason it ended up at my location here on my model train.
Mhm.
And then what I did is I just put it on a passing siding on my layout. So I filmed that using my cell phone and
Mhm.
posted it to the group. And then David responded with a reply with a video of him picking up the boxcar at his place. And to make things a little easier to understand, we both agreed to use a yellow boxcar. So I used a yellow reefer that I had,
Mhm.
and he used a yellow boxcar that he had on his layout. And this way, people could hopefully associate that this yellow shipment in this yellow car was moved from my place to his layout. And it also went through that transition I was talking about because my layout's from 1910 steam era. And I think David's is from about the 1950s or 60s, sort of the steam diesel transition. And so he picked up modern steel boxcar, whereas I shipped him a wooden, reefer
Sure.
from my era. So
And it's a really neat idea, and that right there just shows that if you can put aside the fact that you ship from 1910 in a wooden boxcar to 1950-ish with a steel boxcar, um, it, I'm sure there's some model railroaders out there cringing when they hear that because rivet counters, and to each their own. But um, if you're looking to get more out of your railroad, and maybe you're in an area where you don't have a lot of model railroaders, you're more secluded. This to me is a great way to be able to get um, do the interchange and have a little more fun. And besides that, you gain some fellowship out of it too.
yeah, it's nice to exchange the little film clips as well, right? Because now you've got, you're building a scene, and it's kind of a way of motivating you to finish the scene, I guess. Like right now I just have styrofoam and track more or less, and a
Right.
structure. So for me, I'm motivated now. Like I'd like to have a nice scene where I drop off the rail car for my fellow model railroaders to pick up the car from. Whereas
Mhm.
right now it's just a styrofoam. It looks like a toy train set at this point. But I'd like to beef it up at some point, make it look good, so that it's kind of more fun for people.
Right. Right. And in reality, I mean, when you get to that point, that's awesome. But there again, like said earlier, it's more the ideology of it. So as long as you can look past that until you get to that point, and others can, it sounds. I'm actually getting really close to actually be able to start moving freight. I'm trying to get myself out of that concept, or I shouldn't say concept, the mindset that I know what my industries are, but just because I don't have the structures built yet, I believe, or I think is like, like I can't I can't do that because I don't have a structure there. I don't know. It's just I'm trying to get past that, and actually just before we started recording this, I got to thinking. I'm like, I've got these little cardboard flat pieces of cardboard I got from work for when we were installing some stuff in trucks. I'm like, I just use those and start taping them together and putting them in as placeholders, and then maybe that'll
Yeah,
my mindset, but I know I want to I'm looking I'm looking forward to actually being able to I'm going to be reaching out. Well, obviously you and I reach out, but I'll probably reach out to David Hahn and myself, and be like, "Hey, I'd like to join into your guys' exchange kind of thing, and get um I guess get a list of what his industries are, and then I'll, send him what mine are, and same with you, and so on and so forth, so we can start doing that. Um, so we've talked about this a little bit. So besides the fun and adding to a person's, um, uh, model railroading, I guess. What do you see are some of the advantages of this group?
Well, I guess there's a couple of advantages. One advantage is that it connects model railroaders together. So if you're just using a card system at home, you're only really communicating with yourself, sort of like playing a game of solitaire. You're on your own, and you're shipping to an imaginary place off your layout or the fiddle yard or whatever it is that you're using as your imaginary place.
Sure.
Whereas, doing this would allow you to do the exact same thing, except now you're connecting with other model railroaders.
Mm-hmm.
And while I was listening to what you were just saying there about your industries and mocking up some cardboard models for a temporary placeholder, I was thinking to myself too that the more people we can get involved, the better it will get, because even on your layout, even though it's half a basement, there's probably some industries you don't have.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for example, let's say David Hahn needed this craft paper or whatever that I shipped on the newsprint.
Mm-hmm.
I could actually send it to your layout first, and then you could send it on to Dave, right? And so we could actually build it up so there's hubs, and this creates even more traffic for people if people want traffic, you know what I mean? So then now you've got 5 or 6 box cars coming through your layout from me and maybe somebody else, and they're all going to David Hahn. So you got to sort the train out and have those 4 or 5 box cars all together in one section, and then drop them off for an interchange for David. And then David might have 1 car for me and 1 car for somebody else, so he sends those to you, and then you got to split them up and leave 1 for me and leave 1 for him, type of thing.
Right.
And so it could get a lot more fun and a lot more interesting, because now we're going to be exchanging videos of 3 or 4 different layouts. Maybe it'd be kind of fun depending on how we can work it out.
Right. And that would, that right there would almost be, in my opinion, would be beneficial to maybe see about working on kind of like a system map. If like I'm representing, as an example, southeastern Iowa. Well, I'm not sure where David is at, but let's just say, I don't know. Let's just say he's like Southwest states, and you're north east of me. So yeah, I mean that would work great. You ship it, reach out to me and say, hey, you've got boxcars coming through for this. I like that idea.
Yeah, I think that'd be neat.
It definitely would. It would definitely add to the modeling, and it would, especially even if you're using the same cars. If a person uses the same cars, you put that car on the layout when it comes through, and then I'm planning on getting a couple different cars so I can do a couple different commodities for this. But then when I don't have them on my railroad, I'll just take them off and store them away, so that way you only see them when it's actually traveling through.
Yeah, and I mean, in the end, I suppose, in a pinch, because obviously, we don't have limitless budgets,
Right.
and you may not, maybe on your layout, let's say, because I saw a new car come out from Rapido Trains that is from the 1920s, and it's a helium car for shipping helium.
Yeah.
And I guess in the old days, they used those cars to fill up things like the Hindenburg, like the old Zeppelins and stuff that went transoceanic travel. And so chances are not too many of us are going to have blimps on our layout, unless maybe you're modeling my era. Right. And so who's going to need these rail cars? I think they probably got scrapped, by the 1950s. They probably didn't exist anymore. But there's nothing saying that car couldn't imaginarily become something different for a while, or, until I could get a box car. Let's say you're shipping something on a flat car, and I don't think I have a flat car yet. But anyways, I may have to use something as a substitute for a while until I can get a flat car,
Right.
And so it could be, there has to be a lot of flexibility in it. Otherwise it's going to get too crazy, and then people won't be able to exchange anything. So,
right. Well, and that's the biggest thing too. I know, well, and something else I thought about, if somebody's really, wanting to add to it, well, what's the reporting marks? Okay, well, make something up. I know when we talked yesterday, you're saying you guys didn't really have the reporting marks, but I know as an example, and I think I still have a locomotive on my railroad that when I bought them, they only had, I got 2 of the same road numbers. So all I did was took Post-it notes and I just cut out the little sticky part and wrote what the number is actually going to be and stuck it on the side of the locomotive until I can get time to change it out.
Yeah.
That's something that you could do on the rail cars as well. Just take a little Post-it note and use the sticky part, right? Interchange and roll it through. So there's a lot that can be done with it.
I saw another really cool idea a number of years ago. I can't remember how long ago it was. What this model railroader did is he took magnets and he glued a small magnet on the top, like underneath the
Mhm.
top roof of the boxcar. And then he had a bunch of colored magnets that were based on the industries that he had on his layout. And then what he did is he took those magnets and he just kind of popped a little marker on each car based off of whatever his card flipping told
Oh,
him to
yeah.
do. And then what he had to do is he had to move those cars to the right, sidings for each industry and shuffle them around. And so it was a really cool way of doing it because it's not permanent. You can take the magnet off. And
Right.
then the next time you want to, do a switching puzzle, you just change all the magnets to whatever the cards say. And then you have to reconfigure everything and move all the cars around. So I gave him something to do. It was kind of neat.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of neat ideas out there for moving cars. And besides the car card and waybill switchless, there's JMRI that'll automatically generate it. And I know before JMRI, or I think at the early stages of JMRI, which was, I think it's 20 or 25 years, um, on my old railroad, I was always looking at trying to find new fun ways to move freight in a realistic way beyond just, okay, well, this car goes to this industry and when it's done it goes here, kind of thing. um I really started at that point in time focusing on paperwork. I would add a little bit of paperwork just because it's like it got to the point of it got, I don't want to say mundane, but okay, you're moving the cars here to here, and okay, well, now I'm adding to slow things down, and paperwork. Well, you got to do this checklist or whatever. And yeah, there's a lot of neat ways to move your cars around your layout and beyond.
I think it adds a lot more to the hobby too, because I've got the oval, and it's nice to turn the steam locomotive up and have it chug around the track, and press the horn a few times and the bell and whatever else, just kind of have some fun. But after a while, probably about 20 minutes of running this thing around the track, having to chug away it, the thrill sort of decreases a little bit for me.
Yeah.
And as a young kid, what I would do is I'd put little army men on the track or something and run them over or whatever, just because there's something to do, right? Like just
Right.
have an accident, or whoa, there's a car on the track, whee! Or something. But now that as an adult, I don't do that so much. But having like this switching puzzle where you are assigning different cars, it forces you to move the cars, and sometimes you have to solve spatial problems or
Mhm.
problems with trying to shuffle these cars just using the track, right? If you make rules that you can't pick up the car and move it somewhere, you have to actually do it with the locomotives. It can be pretty tricky, and you could be doing that for a couple of hours, and it doesn't really lose interest as much as maybe just running around in a big circle would do.
Right. Well, and speaking of the puzzles, I know I did that, and on one section for one of my industries, I could have. I originally was planning coming in off the siding and just putting in a lead right to the industry, and then I'm like, I want it to be a little bit of a puzzle. So this particular industry, um, depending on the locomotive you're switching with, you can either handle two. The spur should say the industry will be able to handle it off the top of my head 4 cars, maybe 5 cars, but the most, depending on the size of the locomotive, cars you're going to be able to switch at one time, and the size of the car is 1 to maybe 3 rail cars. So,
Okay.
because it's one of those, you have to hit the short tail track and push into the industry. And I did that on purpose just to add a little bit. My personal opinion on switching puzzles, if your whole layouts, or if your your setup is, that's all it is a switching puzzle. That's one thing. But on an operating layout, my opinion, if you're going to put a switching puzzle in, make it somewhat, don't make it too complicated. Otherwise, especially if others are going to be operating, because it it takes the fun out of it if you're sitting there for, in my opinion, scratching your head and can't figure something out. It just, mine is more, okay, it's slowing you down. You can't just take these 5 cars, drag them out, grab the next 5 and push them in. You got to split your cars going in there to put them in there.
Yeah, I guess too, like if we're rivet counting, which everybody makes fun of, but if
Right.
we're rivet counting too, if you actually owned a actual revenue generating real life railroad, you would not want
Oh,
your locomotive engineer struggling to put one boxcar in an industry. Like, you want it to be as efficient as possible.
right.
So like for our purposes of the model, maybe it's okay to have a little bit of time consuming stuff, but I mean, you wouldn't want your entire, especially your basement empire, in this like
Right.
huge switching complex thing. It would be a little bit too much.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, the modeling portion of it, yes. But yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. If you're a rivet counter and you're making it as real as possible, yeah, you're absolutely right. Railroads want their cars switched in the most efficient manner, and yeah, you're absolutely right. Switching puzzles, they would be like, nope, we're taking all them out and we're doing this whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
So
Sorry, locomotive engineer that enjoys shuffling cars all day in one spot, but you're not going to
right,
be doing that. We need these. This freight's got to move.
right. Oh, I'm sure they're paid by the hour, I'm sure. So yeah,
Yeah.
we'll sit here all day.
Have some
So
guy sitting there. I wonder if I could get this boxcar to ricochet off this industry and into this door. And
right, right. So anything else you'd like to say about the model railway freight exchange?
well, I mean, obviously not everybody's going to be interested in it, but I think people should try it, give it a chance, maybe see if it works for you. You could probably use the freight exchange sort of like a part-time thing, right? Like, you could be doing your card system at home, and depending on how frequently you want to run your railroad, like if you're running it every day, maybe you're retired and have lots of time and it's just something fun you like to do, then you could be doing that by card system a lot, and then every now and then you could have this interchange track and you get something from, say, David Hahn, or from me, or from you, or something, or whatever,
Mhm.
and add it into that whole thing. It's kind of fun, I think, to have an element of randomness or uncontrolledness in it too, right? Like if you're playing with the cards and you only have 4 cards and 4 boxcars, and that's what you run every day, then suddenly some guy, from Canada sends you this weird yellow boxcar full of newsprint. Well, now you got to figure out what you're going to do with it, right? And so, like, it kind of would add like a bit more of a challenge to things every now and then.
Mhm.
For those of us that don't have as much time on our hands, we might only, like, I think David Hahn and I have only done like 3 exchanges so far,
Mhm.
and that's partially because I don't have a layout set up, but it's also like, because I'm still under construction. But
Mhm.
it's also because, I mean, he works, I work, like, we're working, we got other priorities, right? Things that we're doing. So, but it's just nice to get the odd exchange in and exchange some videos and see how the other person's layout is, you know, developing, and what new things they've done. And so it's
Right.
just a nice way to kind of, you know, interlock and build the community, because, like you say, I think model railroading is becoming a little less popular than it used to be with all the computer games.
Mhm.
And so there's a little, maybe fewer of us, and we're kind of scattered more over a larger geographical area. So it's kind of nice if we can connect, even if it is just virtually over something like Facebook or whatever.
Right. Oh, I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. And I think some of it too, going back to what you're saying as far as um less popular, is I think a lot of it has to do with everything is online, or not everything, a majority of it's online. There are way less hobby shops and model railroad shops than there used to be, shoot, 20, 25 years ago. And
Yeah.
so everything's online and people scroll, oh, okay, well, maybe you search once and now all of a sudden you have 50 ads a day for, this online railroad shop or this one. And Well, it's not the same looking at it online as it was back in the day, walking into a hobby shop, picking up that locomotive, that boxcar, or whatever. And even I even talking about that, I even remember the days of when I was a kid walking into the hobby shop, this one particular one where I grew up, and you could walk in and you could smell the hobby shop.
Yeah.
You could smell the cork roadbed and like their repair side where they were repairing some steam. So you'd smell kind of like that little burnt oil smell and electric. It was, I mean, so yeah, it's, I like the idea of the group. I know I've talked about it early on in episodes about interchange beyond the basement, virtual interchange. And that was about the time I think I found your group. So, um, no, I think it's a great group, and I think everybody should check it out if they're on Facebook, Model Railway Freight Exchange. Go and join it. You'll see myself and Joe here, and I know I've brought a few people over into the group too. So, well, Joe, if you have any final thoughts or anything.
Um, Nothing in particular. I just was thinking, well, we were just talking there about some of the systems like the JMRI, which is
Mhm.
something you've actually introduced me to just in the last day or two. I didn't really realize that existed.
Mhm.
But still, even if I'm dealing with something like that, it's still more of an AI, I think, generated freight system, right? Where the computer is kind of randomly, maybe you put in some rules and regulations, and then it kind of, this one business is getting a shipment once a week or whatever, and it just kind of pumps that out. Is that kind of how that works? Or-
I haven't really. I've only toyed with it, that portion of it, a little bit. Uh,
Okay.
but you go in, like each industry you go in and you set, yeah, you do kind of set parameters of what kind of cars that industry will take. So as an example, um, my uh, my metal tags manufacturer, MA Metalworks, it will receive thin steel. It'll receive adhesives in different forms. It'll receive electronics. It'll receive like ink for printing these tags and stuff. So basically, box cars, coil cars, flat cars, and gondola for scrap. So I would go in on that industry and select those particular cars for that industry. Now, on the flip side, my Ogunda Pay grain, it is basically covered hoppers. So those are going to be the only cars that, I select for that. And then my team track, it accepts more or less all kinds of cars, I think, with the exception of tank cars for that one. And you do that. And then based off of that, and you enter your car information in and everything, and once you get your routes and everything set up, yeah, it'll automatically generate, okay, this car needs to go here, here, and here. And as long as you do the switch list, that you switch the cars out via the switch list, and at what the switch list says, the next time you go to generate a switch list to operate, it knows that car's in that spot, so it's going to move it from, say, my team track to my C shield warehousing, or vice versa, or whatever. The downside to it, though, is, and I've seen this in the groups and a lot of groups about JMRI, is if a car doesn't get moved, or let's say you have to repair a car and it doesn't get put back where it was, then it okay, your car's sitting at the team track. It should be at the warehouse, but it's throwing it off. But there again, you can go in and with the computer change some of that. My biggest issue for me right now, because I still need to learn it more, is it's a lot of sitting at the computer to get it set up, which is not that
Mhm.
big of a deal, but I'm just doing it in little chunks at a time. But
Yeah.
the other thing, sitting there trying to learn it.
Right.
And
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, and, like I said, for me, my biggest thing that I use it for now is originally when I started JMRI, well, I was gonna originally, if you go to early podcast episodes, I wasn't gonna do JMRI, and then it's like, all right, well, I'll toy with it. Well, I'm not gonna worry about the Decoder Pro because I'm from the old age of my Digitrax where you do everything through the throttle. So I was just gonna use it for the operations side. Well, then I started dabbling in the Decoder Pro side, for programming the locomotives and stuff. Well, that's kind of overtaken the operations side right now because, and all at the beginning of this, I was like, no, I'm never going to have my layout hooked to a computer. Well, that changed. So, but,
Yeah.
I really like the JMRI for definitely for the programming of the locomotives. Like we said, I said earlier, you can, if yours is able to do that, or they have a module where you can connect it to your computer, you should go in and remap the sounds or functions basically. And the nice thing about it is the way DCC works is when you remap those, that stays on that decoder in that locomotive. It's not the system.
Okay.
So, like,
Hmm.
if you remapped them on yours, say a locomotive, and you came down here to Iowa and brought your locomotive and ran it on here on my Digitrax system, that what was it? The coal shoveling, I think he said was whatever F22 or whatever. Let's say you remap
Yeah.
the number 8, or that's actually shut sound off. So number 7, if you ran it on my system, it would be number 7 as well. So
Okay. But once you program your chip, it kind of stays programmed that way,
yeah,
depending on what system the other person has. Okay, that's kind of
yep,
neat.
yep.
And
So
the other thing I would add too is in our conversation, you'd mentioned that you have a team track on your layout,
mhm,
and a team track is kind of like a place where box cars or any kind of car really could be stopped
mhm,
and unloaded and loaded onto trucks or vehicles and then distributed through the rest of the town by truck, I guess, right, or by some sort of cart.
yep.
And so that's kind of a good universal drop off spot. And similarly, the railway station that I have on my layout is kind of like that too. It's got a big sort of warehousing area where townsfolk might be ordering, say, like a shovel or something for their farm, and so that shovel could come on a box car and then be unloaded at the station, and then later on, Farmer Jed can show up with his donkey cart or whatever and pick up his shovel and take it to his farm. So those kind of industries are ideal for doing a freight exchange because then you can receive a lot of different things, even if you don't have a shovel industry on your layout or somebody making shovels on your layout, you can still receive a shovel and still have that traffic on your layout, which I think is really useful if you for anyone that's going to join a group like the Freight Exchange, having some of those universal type of shipping locations that can receive and ship a lot of different things that are really cool and will
Right.
help them a lot. So
Oh, I agree. That was one of the things that when, after I got my lower level built, and I was working on my upper level track plan or ideas, I read somewhere, must in a book or something, that about team tracks. I always knew what they were, but I was like, I don't know. But that's the nice thing about a team track. You don't necessarily need a structure. It can like mine's fairly close to the front edge of the layout. There's not a real huge area. I might be able to fit a small building in there to be like kind of like the guard shack or whatever of the team track. Um, but I I told myself, well, I want to be able to have something to where like I said, I have those reefers. Okay, I like the reefers. I don't have any industries on them, but I like the look of a set of mechanical reefers going down the track. So you know what? My team track could be just that. Some industry, they're doing things the old way, and you know what? They might get a few reefers in. They have to unload by truck or whatever. So
yeah,
yeah, team track is, like you said, the best way. If anybody listening to this and they're building a railroad, and you want to do anything outside your railroad, make sure you have a spur, siding, whatever, and you can make it a team track to where it could be a team slash interchange track even. Okay, well, this
yep.
comes in, you run it around your railroad, and it ends up back there. It gets unloaded, run it around your railroad, and ship it out that same track. You could do something all it takes is just one little spur. As long as it's big enough for one rail car, that's all you need.
Exactly. And like a lot of times, especially if you're modeling a small layout,
Mm-hmm.
something to always keep in mind is that different tracks can serve multiple purposes. Like on my layout, I have a very long passing siding, but it can also be a runaround for switching cars. It could be all kinds of things. And it has to be that way because when you're on a small layout, you can't have, 17 track yards and all this kind of stuff because there's no room for it, right? So you got to you still have to, what do they call it? You have to compress things down. Otherwise, you're never going to be able to do it. Not only that, it gets expensive. If I had like 17 switches, that's probably almost $1,000 worth of switches.
Right. Oh,
Easily, right?
trust me, for my railroad, let me think here. I've got close to 34, 36 turnouts on my layout,
Oh,
both levels. Yeah. And of course I didn't buy them all at once. It was in stages, but yeah, going back, trying to figure out, cause I still have, I don't know, oh shoot, I bet you 6 or 8 at least that I need to put tortoise switch machines under. And I started calculating them up and I'm like, man, I've already bought 2 12-packs plus a 6-pack so basically I've bought 24, 30 already, tortoise switch machines, and I still have 6 or 8 more turnouts. And it's like, oh man, then I start thinking in my head, yeah, what those cost? Wow. But they were purchased over time. So it wasn't,
yeah.
it didn't hit, but when I sat and thought about it, I'm like, ooh, that's a lot of money just in turnouts.
Yeah. Yeah. Like can get expensive, and that's another reason that it's good to be focused because
Yeah.
then you get exactly what you want. Like for me, having a focus of a certain time frame has prevented me from buying things because I've seen some really cool, cabooses and some really cool passenger cars and stuff like that, but because they were built, in 1950, they're too new for my layout, so now I can't buy them, and that sort of prevents me from buying them, which is kind of saving me some money. Otherwise, I'd probably be broke.
Right. Oh, I understand that. I understand that. So, all right, Joe, I really appreciate you coming on the show. And thank you for coming on. And it was nice having you on here. And actually, I look forward to, we'll have to get you back on the show down the road and see how the group is doing.
Sure, sounds good. I really appreciate having the opportunity to come on the show and to chat with you and also to hopefully explain things a little bit better than I can with texting on the railway freight exchange. Maybe people will understand more that they don't have to ship an actual rail car and put it in a box and mail it by U.S. Postal Service or something like that. None of that's required. It's all done virtually, in that imaginary space. So.
Yep. And I'd like to add also, you don't need to have a huge layout. It could be something as simple as an oval of track with just one spur.
Yeah, one spur is plenty good enough if you got a team track or a railway station or something that's a universal interchange point for changing stuff from rail to cart or rail to truck or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's perfect.
Yep. All right, Joe, thanks for coming on. And until the next time, keep your train on the tracks. Well, there you have it, folks. Joe Menard from the Model Railway Freight Exchange Group. By all means, check that out. I'm going to try to remember when I edit this to put a link to that. If you're on Facebook, you can click on that and head on over there and check it out. It's a really cool way to be able to do a roundabout way of interchange beyond the basement. And I've talked about that here before, on way earlier episodes about how you can, when you're at that point of, okay, maybe you built a little 4x8 like Joe's doing, and you've ran it around and done everything you can, you're starting to kind of get bored. Well, guess what? This is a way to bring excitement back into your hobby or your layout. You might be limited on space, funds, whatever, but this is a great way to add some extra fun to your railroad. And you can make it as simple or as complicated as you want. If you have the time, maybe you're done, your layout's built, and you don't have any more room, and you can do bill of ladings, or you can come up create paperwork for your exchange or whatever. A lot of great ideas. Joe was telling us about the group and everything, so definitely check the group out. Before we end this, we are going to read another one from our 400 plus thrilling and unbelievable train facts for enthusiasts. And what's funny is, before I was recording this segment to, finish this episode off, I was flipping through the book, and I'm basically, I'm each chapter, I'm starting with the first one, and then of course I'll start, and I'm just randomly choosing chapters. And then I'll move to the second one, and so on and so forth. And I'm highlighting them as I do them. So I was flipping through, and I'm like, holy cow, we've done almost every chapter. I think there's just maybe one or two more of the number ones, or the first ones in the chapters. And we're going to be moving on to other ones. So, thank you for listening to these. So let's just get right into this one. This one is from the chapter Dynamic Duels in Railway History. The Great Locomotive Chase. During the American Civil War in 1862, Union soldiers led by James J. Andrews conducted a daring raid to sabotage Confederate supply lines by stealing a locomotive named the General. The ensuing chase, known as the Great Locomotive Chase, saw Union raiders pursued by Confederate forces along the Western and Atlantic Railroad, resulting in a thrilling locomotive duel. So there you go. Another one from the book of 400 plus thrilling and unbelievable train facts for enthusiasts, written by Nathan Ward. Thank you to the girlfriend's daughter for getting that for me for Christmas. That's awesome. Don't forget to check out our YouTube channel. We're getting real close to hitting 1,000 over there, and that's awesome. I'm trying to get some content together. I've just been busy with the podcast and getting through some stuff, and so yeah, I'm working on some videos over there. You can check us out on Facebook. Our Facebook page has been gaining more and more followers on there, so that's awesome. And do not forget about our sponsor, our supporter, I should say, not sponsor, our supporter, Broadway Limited Imports. Thank you to them for sponsoring our giveaway, and for supporting us on this podcast. It is awesome to be working with them, and I look forward to continuing to work with them. So, if you have any questions, you can reach out to us, modelrailroadtalk@gmail.com, or you can head on over to our website, www.modelrailroadtalk.com. And we've got a link over there that you can reach out to us. And then we're kind of changing up how we do. I said it in the last episode as well, but we're changing up how we go through the process to get guests onto the show now. And if you or someone would benefit or be interested in coming onto this show, send them over to our website. Click on the Your Story tab at the top and fill that out, and that comes directly to me, and I will be in contact once I get it and get things planned. So, like we said, you can check us out on YouTube. You can check us out on Facebook. We are on TikTok. So, yeah, I want to thank everybody for the support up to this point. I just, it means the world to me. And if you're interested in supporting us, you can go do it through our website. There's several links over there. You can go to www.patreon.com/model railroad talk and support us there. Or you can go to buymeacoffee.com/MODRAIL, or I'm sorry, RAILTLK. I drew a blank there for a second. And if you throw some support our way there, or you can do it through PayPal as well. All that goes to help offset some of the costs for the programs and maintenance upkeep. And that's really all that it's doing, is that right now is offsetting the costs. So it adds up after a while. I got into doing this podcast thinking, oh, great, hey, we'll do this. But then as time went on, advancements and stuff with how the podcast is going, and it's like, ooh, those costs hit. And so, but anyways, I want to thank everybody for listening and supporting this podcast. And like we always say, until the next episode, keep your train on the tracks.